You need to understand, this is your only way out.
But what if they find out it was me?
It was an ordinary afternoon, the kind of day when the world seemed to move too fast for anyone to notice the girl standing quietly at the corner booth. Her apron was faded, the fabric torn at the seams, her shoes scuffed from years of walking across greasy floors. She moved with a rhythm that spoke of exhaustion, carrying plates no one cared to thank her for, refilling coffee cups without a single glance in return. To them, she was invisible, the kind of person whose presence blended into the background, like the hum of a neon sign buzzing above the diner door. But that day, something shifted. A man walked in. Not just any man, though no one in that diner recognized him at first. His suit was simple, not flashy, his hair silver at the temples, and his watch hidden beneath his cuff. He looked like just another weary traveler sitting down at the counter. Yet his eyes carried a weight, a sharpness, as if he saw things the rest of the world chose to ignore. The waitress approached, her smile small but practiced, her voice steady despite the ache in her back. He studied her for a moment longer than most, then gave a nod, almost like he already knew something the rest of them didn't. When he left, he slipped a folded note beneath the chipped saucer of his untouched coffee. The girl found it minutes later, trembling fingers unfolding the paper, her breath catching as she read the words that would change the course of her life forever. And that, my friends, is where our story begins. Before I take you further, if you believe in stories that reveal the hidden strength of ordinary people, I invite you to join us, like, share, and subscribe to Acts of Depth. Your support allows stories like this to find the light, just like the one you're about to hear. Because what was written on that note was something no one in that diner could have ever imagined. Her name was Anna, 19 years old, but her eyes carried the weight of someone twice her age. Every morning, she tied her hair back with the same worn ribbon her mother had once given her, a ribbon that had frayed at the edges just like the dreams she once held so tightly. Life had not been gentle. Her father had vanished when she was a child, and her mother had passed during her final year of school, leaving behind only debts and the fragile hope that Anna might one day escape the small town that seemed designed to swallow people whole. But escape never came. Instead, Anna found herself in this roadside diner, serving plates of greasy food to truck drivers, businessmen, and strangers who never cared to remember her name. The regulars called her Kid or Sweetheart, but never Anna. To them, she was just the girl who cleaned their tables, refilled their coffee, and disappeared into the kitchen before they could even notice she existed. At night, when the lights dimmed and the last customer left, she would sit at an empty booth, tracing the wood grain with her fingertips, wondering if life would always feel this small. But despite the hardships, Anna carried something within her that no one could take away. An unshakable kindness. She never let a plate leave her hands without a smile, never let a rude word from a customer steal the warmth from her tone. Sometimes she would even slip an extra cookie onto a child's plate, or refill a cup for a tired old man without charging him. Small acts of humanity, invisible to most, but born from a heart that refused to harden. Still, beneath her steady smile was a quiet ache. She kept a notebook tucked beneath the counter, pages filled with sketches of a life she dreamed of. A little cafe of her own one day, sunlight pouring through windows, customers who knew her name, not because she served them, but because she was part of their lives. She would draw the cafe's sign over and over again, a simple word written in careful strokes: hope. And yet, Every night when she closed her notebook, reality returned. The rent was overdue, the tips barely enough to buy groceries, and the weight of survival kept her chained to a world that offered little more than exhaustion. What Anna didn't know, what she couldn't have imagined, was that her life was about to collide with someone who had the power to change everything. Someone who, in a single act, would remind her that sometimes even the smallest life can hold the greatest story. The next day at the diner began the same as always. Anna arrived before sunrise, sweeping the tiled floor while the coffee brewed, setting each fork and knife with precision. By the time the morning rush filled the booths, she had already slipped into the rhythm of invisibility. Orders shouted from the kitchen, coins clattering on the counter, conversations buzzing loud enough to drown her thoughts. But that morning, something felt different. The man from the day before returned. He sat at the same seat at the counter, hands folded calmly in front of him, as if waiting for something only he could see. Anna's pulse quickened when their eyes met. She wanted to ask about the note, about the words that had left her awake half the night, staring at the ceiling. Yet when she approached, her voice faltered. Before she could speak, a sharp laugh cut through the air. The diner's owner, Mr. Garrison, had been watching. A heavy-set man with eyes that always seemed to gleam with contempt, Garrison had never treated Anna as more than disposable. "Don't waste your time with him," he barked, wiping his greasy hands on a rag. "You've got tables waiting." "Move." Anna lowered her head, swallowing the words she wanted to say. She had learned long ago that silence kept her safe. But the man's eyes didn't leave her. He watched the way she carried herself under Garrison's shadow, the way she smiled through the rudeness of customers, the way her kindness seemed to bloom even in soil meant to crush it. By noon, the diner was alive with noise. A group of businessmen had claimed a booth, their voices loud, their demands endless. Anna rushed between tables, arms aching from the weight of plates, sweat clinging to her hairline. One of the men sneered as she bent to clear their dishes. "Careful, sweetheart," he muttered, just loud enough for his friends to hear. "Don't trip. Wouldn't want you spilling on my suit. Probably worth more than your rent." The others laughed. Anna forced a smile, though her hands trembled as she carried the plates away. She was used to it. Mockery, dismissal, the constant reminder that in their eyes she was nothing. But what she didn't see was the man at the counter tightening his jaw, his hand curling into a fist beneath the table. Because this was no ordinary traveler. His name was Richard Hale, a billionaire whose wealth was whispered about in boardrooms across the country. But here, in this diner, he wasn't interested in power or recognition. He was watching, waiting, measuring something far more valuable than money, the quiet strength of a girl the world had chosen not to see. And in that moment, as laughter echoed from the businessmen's booth, Richard Hale made a decision. That evening, after the last customer left and the neon sign outside flickered weakly against the fading sky, Anna slumped into a booth, exhaustion pulling at every muscle. She pulled her notebook from beneath the counter, the one with hope written across the pages. Slowly, she sketched the outline of a window with sunlight pouring in, imagining the cafe that lived only in her dreams. She didn't notice Richard Hale standing near the door. He had stayed behind, quiet, watching her pencil move with steady determination. For a long moment, he said nothing, only studied the fragile hope taking shape on the paper. Then, softly, he spoke. "Why do you keep drawing that?" Anna startled, snapping the notebook closed. "It's nothing. Just something I do." But Richard stepped closer, his voice low, almost gentle. People don't spend hours drawing nothing. What is it you're trying to build? Anna hesitated. No one had ever asked. No one had ever cared. Her throat tightened, words caught between fear and longing. Finally, she whispered, "A place of my own. A cafe. Warm, bright, where no one feels invisible." Richard's eyes softened. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a second folded note. He set it on the table between them. "Read it when you're ready," he said quietly. And with that, he walked out, the bell above the door ringing once before silence returned. Anna sat frozen, the note staring up at her like it carried the weight of destiny. Her hands shook as she unfolded the paper. It wasn't money. It wasn't a check or promise of riches. It was a single sentence, written in steady, deliberate handwriting. "The world needs your cafe. Meet me tomorrow." Her chest tightened, tears blurring her vision. For the first time in years, she felt seen. Truly seen. Not as the girl who served coffee, not as the orphan who scraped by, but as someone whose dream mattered. She clutched the note against her chest, heart racing, the diner suddenly too small to hold the hope flooding through her veins. Tomorrow, whatever tomorrow meant, was going to change everything. The next morning, sunlight poured through the diner's dusty windows, casting long streaks across the tiled floor. Anna arrived early, her nerves fluttering like wings inside her chest. She kept glancing at the door, waiting, uncertain if the man's promise had been real or just another cruel trick the world played on dreamers. The first hour passed in restless silence. Customers came and went. Mr. Garrison barked orders as usual, his voice sharp enough to cut through bone. The businessmen returned, laughing loudly, treating Anna like she was invisible. Each moment felt heavier, pressing against her hope, threatening to smother it. Then, the bell above the door rang. Richard Hale stepped inside. This time he was not alone. Behind him entered 3 people in tailored suits, carrying leather briefcases, their presence commanding the room. Conversations hushed. Even Garrison paused, wiping his hands nervously on his apron. Richard walked straight to Anna's booth. He set a folder down in front of her, his voice calm but firm. "I wasn't lying yesterday. I believe the world needs your cafe, and I believe you deserve the chance to build it." Anna's breath caught as she opened the folder. Inside were documents, lease agreements, design plans, financial backing already secured. Her eyes widened. She looked up at him, stunned. I don't understand. Why me?" Richard leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Because I've built empires and seen how power corrupts. But what I saw here was different. You gave kindness where there was none. You carried hope when no one carried you. That is rarer than wealth. That is strength." A murmur swept through the diner. The businessmen shifted uncomfortably. Even Mr. Garrison tried to step forward, forcing a smile. "Now, Mr. Hale, she's just a waitress." Richard cut him off, his voice sharp as steel. "She's more than that. She's a builder, a dreamer, and from this day forward, she won't be working for you." The silence that followed was deafening. Garrison's mouth opened, then closed, powerless against the weight of Richard's words. For once, Anna wasn't invisible. She was the center of the room, the girl who had been overlooked, now standing at the threshold of something greater. Tears welled in her eyes as she clutched the papers. Her notebook lay open on the table, the word hope sketched across the page. Richard glanced at it, then smiled softly. "Looks like you've already chosen the name." Anna's heart swelled, her voice trembling. "You really mean this? You'll help me build it?" Richard nodded. "No, Anna. We'll build it. Together." And just like that, her world shifted. What had once felt like a prison of endless nights and invisible labor had become a doorway to freedom. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was the owner of her future, the architect of her dream. Months later, sunlight streamed through the windows of a brand-new cafe. The sign outside read simply, boldly, "Hope." Customers filled the tables, laughter and warmth flowing like music. And at the center of it all stood Anna, no longer unseen, but shining in the place she had always belonged. The note that had started it all was framed on the wall near the counter. Every time she looked at it, she remembered. Sometimes it takes just one act of recognition, one moment of belief, to change everything. So I'll leave you with this. In a world where so many people feel invisible, how often do we stop to see them? To truly see their dreams, their struggles, their hidden strength? Because maybe, just maybe, the smallest kindness can be the spark that builds someone else's tomorrow.